San Siro, June 1990. Maradona walks off the pitch in tears. A 14-year-old Francesco Totti watches from the stands, mesmerized. The stadium roars, not for a champion, but for a moment that would change everything. Italia 90 didn't just crown a World Cup winner, it ignited a revolution. Within a year, Serie A became the most expensive league on earth. Every superstar wanted one thing: to play in Italy. This is the story of how a World Cup turned a league into an empire, and how that empire eventually crumbled. Italia 90 wasn't just a tournament, it was a global advertisement for Italian football's infrastructure, its passion, its sophistication. The world watched, stadiums were rebuilt, television audiences exploded, and suddenly everyone wanted a piece of what Italy had built. The ban on foreign players had been lifted in 1980, but Italia 90 accelerated everything. Clubs realized they could compete for any player on the planet, and they had the money to do it. Silvio Berlusconi at Milan, the Agnelli family at Juventus, Massimo Moratti at Inter. These weren't just owners, they were billionaires who treated clubs like passion projects, not businesses. The financial model was simple: TV rights, money flooded in, owners wrote checks, and Serie A outbid everyone. Between 1990 and 1999, Italian clubs broke the world transfer record 6 times. Roberto Baggio from Fiorentina to Juventus for €12.9 million. Riots broke out in Florence. Jean-Pierre Papin to Milan. Gianluca Vieri to Juventus. Ronaldo to Inter for €26.5 million. Christian Vieri to Lazio, then to Inter for €46 million a year later. The league wasn't just rich, it was obscenely, recklessly rich. And the players followed the money. Maradona had already arrived at Napoli in 1984, but after Italia 90, the floodgates opened. Zinedine Zidane chose Juventus over Barcelona. Ronaldo, the Brazilian phenomenon, picked Inter at his absolute peak. Gabriel Batistuta stayed at Fiorentina when Barcelona came calling because Italian clubs simply paid more. This wasn't about prestige anymore, it was about power. TV rights became the engine. In 1993, Serie A's broadcasting deal was worth $67.5 million per year. By 1996, that number hit €100 million as 4 media groups fought for packages, live games, highlights, international rights. The 1997-98 season introduced pay-per-view. Revenues kept climbing, and clubs spent it all. Parma, a town of 170,000 people, could outbid Manchester United for Lilian Thuram. Lazio signed Juan Sebastian Veron for €30 million and built a midfield that rivaled any in Europe. Fiorentina kept Batistuta instead of selling him to Spain. The logic was intoxicating. If you can afford the best, you buy the best. But there was something else happening beneath the surface. This wasn't just about signing stars, it was about building dynasties. AC Milan, under Arrigo Sacchi, revolutionized football. High pressing, zonal marking, the Dutch trio of Marco van Basten, Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, back-to-back European Cups in 1989 and 1990. Then Fabio Capello's machine won again in 1994. Juventus built an institution, Roberto Baggio pulling strings, then Zinedine Zidane, Alessandro Del Piero, Edgar Davids, Filippo Inzaghi. 3 consecutive Champions League finals from 1996 to 1998. Inter had Ronaldo at his absolute peak, 26 goals in his first season, unstoppable until his body betrayed him. But here's what made Serie A surreal. Even mid-table clubs had squads that could win trophies. Parma fielded Gianluigi Buffon, Fabio Cannavaro, Lilian Thuram, Hernan Crespo, Juan Sebastian Veron, 2 UEFA Cups, a Cup Winners' Cup. Lazio had Alessandro Nesta, Pavel Nedved, Veron, Marcelo Salas. They won the Scudetto in 2000 with a midfield that could start for any club in Europe. This was the era of the Seven Sisters: Milan, Inter, Juventus, Roma, Lazio, Fiorentina, Parma, all capable of European glory. And defending in Serie A wasn't just about physicality, it was about intelligence, positioning, suffocating space. Attackers who dominated elsewhere looked ordinary in Italy because the margin for error was microscopic. This was football's hardest exam, and passing it meant something. By the mid-1990s, Serie A had become the final destination for every elite player. If you wanted to be taken seriously, you played in Italy. This wasn't a league with one or two super teams. This was a league where mid-table clubs had squads that would qualify for the Champions League today. The numbers tell part of the story, but they don't capture the scale. In 1996, Luis Figo had 3 offers on the table: Parma, Juventus, and Barcelona. He immediately dismissed Barcelona and signed contracts with both Italian clubs because he wanted to play in Italy at all costs. The Italian Football Federation had to intervene to stop him from joining either one. That's how dominant Serie A was. A future Ballon d'Or winner had to be denied entry because the league was too attractive. AC Milan's 1993-94 season remains one of the most complete campaigns in history. They won the Scudetto, conceding just 15 goals in 34 matches. The defensive line of Franco Baresi, Alessandro Costacurta, Paolo Maldini and Mauro Tassotti could be argued as the best defensive four football has ever seen. Juventus weren't just winning, they were building something that felt permanent. 3 consecutive Champions League finals, a team that blended tactical perfection with individual brilliance. Zidane dictating tempo, Del Piero finishing chances, Davids and Didier Deschamps controlling the engine room. Inter had Ronaldo doing things that shouldn't have been possible. 26 goals in his first season. Defenders couldn't touch him. When he moved, space opened. When he shot, goalkeepers guessed. But the real story, the one that shows just how absurd this era was, is what happened outside the big 3. Parma won 2 UEFA Cups and a Cup Winners' Cup with a squad built around Gianluigi Buffon, Fabio Cannavaro and Lilian Thuram. That's 3 players who would go on to define a generation. And they were all at Parma at the same time. Lazio's 1999-2000 title-winning squad had Nesta, Nedved, Veron, Salas, Sinisa Mihajlovic and Diego Simeone. That midfield alone could have walked into any team in Europe. Fiorentina kept Gabriel Batistuta when Barcelona came calling. Not because Barcelona couldn't afford him, because Fiorentina could afford to keep him. Roma had Francesco Totti, who became the symbol of loyalty in an era defined by movement. But even Roma spent big, 25.8 million euros for Vincenzo Montella in 1999. This was the era of the 7 sisters. 7 clubs: Milan, Inter, Juventus, Roma, Lazio, Fiorentina, Parma, all capable of winning European trophies. All stacked with world-class talent, all competing at the highest level. Defending in Serie A wasn't just about stopping goals, it was about controlling games, reading patterns, cutting angles before attackers even saw them. Attackers who dominated in Spain or England looked ordinary in Italy because the margin for error was microscopic. Scoring 15 goals in Serie A meant more than scoring 25 elsewhere. This was football's hardest exam, and the world knew it. But empires built on endless spending rarely last. The cracks appeared slowly, then all at once. The financial model that built Serie A, billionaire owners covering losses, TV money growing forever, was never sustainable. In 2002, Lazio's owner, Sergio Cragnotti, resigned amid a €272 million debt crisis. His food company Serio had collapsed, taking the club's finances with it. Parma's backer Parmalat imploded in 2003 with a €14 billion accounting scandal, Italy's Enron. The club that had fielded Buffon, Cannavaro and Thuram went bankrupt. They would eventually restart in Serie D. Fiorentina went bankrupt in 2002 and had to begin again 3 flights down in Serie C2. The club that kept Batistuta when Barcelona came calling couldn't pay its debts. Napoli, the club that Maradona built, was declared bankrupt in 2004. These weren't small clubs struggling to compete. These were institutions, members of the Seven Sisters, clubs that had won European trophies, and they collapsed. The Bosman ruling in 1995 had already shifted power to players. Clubs lost control over transfer fees, wages spiraled. The leverage that had allowed Italian clubs to dominate the market disappeared. Meanwhile, the Premier League was modernizing, new stadiums, global branding, broadcast deals that dwarfed Italy's. English clubs were building infrastructure, while Italian clubs were still renting crumbling stadiums from municipalities, limiting matchday revenue. Then came Calciopoli in 2006. Match-fixing scandal. Juventus relegated. Trust shattered. The best players started leaving, not to prove themselves in Italy, but to escape it. Zlatan Ibrahimovic left Juventus for Inter, then Milan, then Barcelona. Kaká went to Real Madrid. Cristiano Ronaldo chose Manchester United over Milan. The flow reversed. By the 2000s, Serie A had become a stepping stone, not a destination. Young talents arrived, developed, then left for England or Spain at the first opportunity. The gap widened. Premier League revenues hit 6.5 billion euros. Serie A managed 2.8 billion euros. What was once the richest league in the world now struggled to keep its own stars. The empire didn't fall in one dramatic moment. It bled out over 2 decades. Clubs that had broken world transfer records 6 times in 9 years couldn't compete for players anymore. The Seven Sisters became a memory. Parma declared bankruptcy again in 2015. The stadiums that had hosted Italia '90 aged into relics. The tactical sophistication that made Serie A special became defensive conservatism. The league that had revolutionized pressing and zonal marking became known for grinding out results. And the world moved on. Serie A in the 1990s wasn't just the best league. It was football at its most ambitious, most reckless, most beautiful. It proved that dominance is temporary, that even giants fall if the foundation is weak. Today's Super Leagues should take note. What happened to Italy can happen to anyone. If you want to see how other football empires rose and fell and would like to hear stories about your favourite clubs and players, then please like and subscribe to Ball and Badge for more stories that shape the game. Thank you.